In this video, I'll show you how you can repair a hacked WordPress website even if you're unable to access your WordPress administrator dashboard. You can do it directly from the command line using the software link down below in the description. In this video, we'll be using the Bitfire command line malware scanner. There's a link down below in the description. Once you've downloaded the scanner, go ahead and copy it to your root directory of your WordPress install, in this case var www/infected, which I'm using for today's demo. And to run the malware scanner, just run your PHP interpreter. In this case, we'll be using PHP 8.2 and the name of the file. So that's PHP 8.2 space scanner.far. If you're using just regular PHP, you can run that as well. For our case, we'll be using 8.2. And what that does is it gives you a nice helpful help screen, which tells you about how the program runs and all of the command line options. So the most important command line option is the path to your WordPress install, and then followed by -s to tell it to actually scan the file system. In this case, we're going to do an interactive malware repair. So we'll be doing -p var www infected. We'll be doing an actual scan, and we'll be running an interactive scan. There's a couple output options. By default, we output colorized information about each identified possible malware file. You can specify -a to print out all information about the file. You can specify -o to just list potential malware file names. After every 100 files, it outputs a tick mark. If you wish to hide the ticks, you can use -h. And if you don't want colorized output, you can use -m. After that, these options down here are all for tweaking the malware scanner. So the malware scanner uses machine learning to identify unusual character frequencies, that's different programming symbols that are found inside the files, or unknown variable names. Most programs use very, very repetitive common variable names, and a lot of malware uses completely random generated variable names. So this is a very effective method for identifying malware. The other thing that we have are maximum line lengths. By default, the maximum line length to identify malware is 2,000 characters. For this case, I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to 9,000 for this run. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off. Immediately, it outputs some information about our scan type and what our settings are. And each one of these X's represents 100 files scanned. Here's our first file. A couple things to notice here. This file was not found in the WordPress repository. That's why the diff size matches the file size, because this file is completely unknown. It outputs the time. Let's actually shrink this a little bit so we can see a little bit more on the screen. It outputs the time the file was last modified, as well as the time the file was created. And these are the unknown variable names. So 50% of these variable names have never been seen before. Our character frequency analysis, or how unusual the characters are in the file, it's not that unusual. It's below our threshold. And the longest line is only 25 characters long. That is unusual. That's actually a little short. We're going to go ahead and press O to show the file, which will output what was flagged as malware. And we can see immediately that this is just a bunch of really random machine-generated variable names, machine-generated data, and arrays of numbers and offsets to creating characters. Probably, yeah, we're running, here we go. These are our dynamic function calls here, which if the unknown variable names weren't detected, these calls right here would have been flagged. So this is obviously malware. I'm going to go ahead and quarantine that file. I do that by pressing Q. And the scan continues, and it notifies me that it renamed load.php to load.php.text, which essentially makes that file inert. Here we have a very similar file. It's 1,300 bytes. 50% of variable names are unknown. Let's go ahead and show that file. And we can see this is very similar to the previous file. So this is obvious malware. We're going to quarantine that. This is more of the same. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly quarantine those so we can try and get through this run as quickly as possible. What I really want to show you are, this is more obvious malware. We have this /x. These are hexadecimal encodings for single characters. This is used to hide exactly what data is being contained here. And then we're including this random file name, which is probably a .ico icon or a .jpeg image. We're going to go ahead and quarantine that file. what I really want to show, and here's another one, it's the exact same thing. What I really want to show you is how we take a look at files that are not so obviously malware or not malware, and the things we use to flag items as malware, not malware, and how we allow good files through that are not malware. So let's show this one. We can see now this doesn't look that unusual. This looks like regular program code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open this file, and I'm going to take a look at it. And here it looks like we're looping over all the post data. We're looking for some type of session key. It's doing some type of string encoding. It's going to unserialize this value, which is here from the post data. If that unserialized value is an array, then it's going to output a PHP version. Otherwise, it looks like it's going to list all directories in the document root, select a random directory, create a destination file in that directory with a random file name, and it's going to paste whatever the value of that post data is to that random file name, and then output what the path to that file is. This is obviously a dropper for a piece of malware that adds another backdoor. We're going to go ahead and quarantine that file. Here's another one. We don't even need to open this. I can show you just so you can see. This is a dynamic function call with a random variable name. We're going to go ahead and quarantine that file. And this is the process. We're going to go through. This install has 25,000 files, and the scanner is going to scan all 25,000 files. This one was identified as reaching our 50% threshold for unknown variable names. And you can see here, it has these really strange variable names that were identified. The first thing that clues me in that this is probably not malware is because the name of this plugin is GPL Zone Updater plugin, which I know is a valid plugin. And gzone-validate plugin name relates directly to the name of our plugin. Now, I've looked at a lot of malware, but I've never seen anyone name the file, an infected file, to the name directly of the plugin. If you look at all these, this name is license. This is a random name. Here's license, random name, license, and load.php, right? Very generic type of names. That's the first thing that clues me in that this is probably not malware. If we show the data, well, we can see why it was flagged as malware. There's a lot of really strange variable names in here, right? Like this is not very normal variable names. But I think what the program author is trying to do is this is some type of licensing, some type of, license validation class. This is an actual license validation class. And they just use these very random variable names probably to just, well, I don't know, maybe they thought that made it more secure. I'm not really sure. But the other thing that clues me in is because we're using actual WordPress functions here, which is very uncommon for malware, as you can see in our previous malware files. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and allow that. I'm going to press A. That's going to add it to a database of allowed file hashes. So if we see the same file somewhere else in the file system, that file will also be allowed. And here we have unusual character frequency. The character frequency is a bit high, 156. I think our threshold is 20 or 30. We're going to go ahead and show. And we can see here, it's just this big string of data, right? It also triggered the long line threshold. This is just a large string of data. This is not actually malware. Even though it's an unknown file, it's because this RevSlider plugin is not in the official plugin directory, which is another reason why this file was flagged, because we don't have a baseline file to compare it against. So I'm going to go ahead and just update the character frequency tables by pressing U. That should help prevent this type of file from being flagged in the future. Next we have, here's more. This is a different type of data file. This looks like JSON encoded data inside our PHP code. And we're going to go ahead and allow that. Here we have move uploaded file. This was flagged because move uploaded file is not technically allowed inside a WordPress install. You're supposed to use the WordPress upload functions. Again, this is not an official WordPress plugin. Don't know where this person got this plugin from. We're going to go ahead and allow that because that is not actually malware. Now we have, here's a very long line and a very high frequency. And this is just basically HTML data with a bunch of PHP calls in here. This doesn't really even look like valid code to me, but this is not malware. So we're going to go ahead and update the frequency tables. Here we have more, more of the same. You'll notice the frequency is lower this time. It's because every time it sees that type of file, here's one with even more, it should start to decrease that character frequency until it drops below the threshold. Let's go ahead and show this file. It's the same thing. We'll update the character frequency. The same thing. We're going to update the character frequency. And we should be through that plugin. So out of 25,000 files in this install, I would expect probably about a dozen files to be misidentified as malware that are not actually malware. Here's the next file, and here is more. This looks like some strange HTML encoding, some custom type of HTML encoding. We'll go ahead and update our character frequency. Here's a Google font in a PHP file. Why people do this, I don't know, but we're going to go ahead and allow that. And now we have a template file. This looks like more of this strange kind of HTML encoding in a PHP file. We'll go ahead and update our character frequencies. And here's more of the same. We'll update. Bankwire reference. Look at this. Yep. This is more of the same. We're going to go ahead and update. And this is the entire process. We basically run through each one of these files. And the more files that a WordPress install has that aren't part of the official WordPress plugin repository, the more false positives will be identified. The Bitfire malware scanner, we try to err on the side of providing more false positive than fewer false positives because we don't want to miss any malware. Because if you miss one piece of malware, whatever your problems were, they're going to come back. So here's another interesting one. Here we have a Mango Pay as part of some Docan Pro plugin. And 50% of the variable names are unknown. Here's the variable names, and probably it just hasn't seen repudiation and debited. We'll go ahead and add those to the list by pressing U. Here's credited and wallet, probably haven't been seen before. We're going to add those to the list. Pay-ins, cumulated. We'll go ahead and add those to the list. Mandate, descriptor. What you'll see is whenever you have a file that's very short that only has a few variable names, and those variable names have not been seen before, those will often trigger this type of unknown variable name malware flag. One of the things that I know these are actually legitimate files is because you can see this isn't a Mango Pay, this is a payment gateway, and all of the unknown words had something to do with monetary funds, transactions, all the file names, settlement transfer, recurring pay in current state. This is all related to payments. When malware installs that stuff, it's going to use very generic names, things like load, license, key, template. It's not going to pick a file name that's somehow actually related to the function of the plugin. It's going to use very generic types of things. Here we have Mart Fury DC vendors. See, this is probably related here to this Docan Pro. These probably things, some kind of payment gateway that's probably related. And these are just weird custom variable names. We're going to go ahead and add those to the list. Mobile detect. Let's see what this looks like here. I'm going to guess this is a regular expression to identify mobile phones. This is not a very efficient regular expression, but that's what they decided to do. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and allow that file because that's not malware. Here we have more unusual character frequency. This is more escape HTML encodings. This is just a sort of a really weird way to do this. We'll go ahead and update. Here is a file with a line that's 18,000 characters long, and I'm going to guess that this is probably an actual icon in a PHP file. And yeah, it's so big. It can't even fit on the page here. Yeah, it's just this huge list of whatever this is. So we're going to go ahead and allow that because it's not malware. I think we're getting close to the end of this scan. Here is another dangerous dynamic function call. And I'm going to say right away, based on the file size and this unintelligible variable name, this is probably malware. And yeah, we can see, we've seen this earlier. We'll go ahead and quarantine that file. And our malware scan's complete. If I look for all of our quarantine files, oops. These are our quarantine files, and there's 8 files that were identified as malware in this install, and we probably had about a dozen files that were identified as a false positive. That's it. That's all there is to it. This website is actually clean now. All the malware has been removed. After you've done this, make sure that you go update all of your plugins and uninstall any unused plugins or any plugins that are no longer being maintained, as these are usually active points of infection. And that's it. If you're unable to bring your website up after that, you probably have maybe a hacked htaccess file or some other very unusual circumstance. I would recommend purchasing the pro version of the Bitfire firewall, which includes a professional malware cleaning if your website's already hacked. If you've purchased the malware scanner, that's applied directly to your purchase price of the professional version. And that comes with a complete guarantee for malware cleaning, and as well as a 1-year guarantee against malware being reinfected on your website if you're running the file protection and multi-factor authentication programs. That's all there is to it. I hope you guys like this. If you have any other comments or suggestions or any ways that you guys like to use to clean up malware, please leave a link down below. If you've had good experiences or bad experiences with the scanner, please leave a comment down in the description. I'd love to hear back from you guys. That's it for today. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.